Good evening. Today is February 23rd, and tonight we are presenting another training or development opportunity for boards and commissions here in Michigan City or nonprofits, whoever would like to use it. This recording will be on My Michigan City on Facebook, and we're going to cover two items. We've invited Controller Hoffmaster here to share a few things to the boards and commissions on some things that, procedural things that should happen from boards and commissions. So she's going to share that information, and then we'll get into Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, good morning, or good morning. It is not morning. It's been a long day. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know how to, let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Oh, so if I share my screen here, I think this is what I want. So I'm not sure what.
Are you seeing the procedure
here we go.
To submit?
Yep. Are you seeing procedures to submit invoices, payroll, and minutes?
Not anymore. We were.
Okay. Let me. All right.
It might be the same document, but it's so big we can't see the top. There you go.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Did we get it back?
Yes, if you could open that screen up.
Yep, I'm trying here. Let me. There we go. How's that?
That's great.
Okay, a lot of our boards and commissions have budgets and they occasionally have invoices. So to meet our internal controls, and to get things paid timely, we need the president of the board or the designee. They must initial and date and write okay to pay on the face of the invoice. And by doing this, this covers the internal controls that we have for the board or commission. Then the invoice can either be scanned or emailed to the city personnel that is outlined in Exhibit A, which is this right here. So I can email this off to anybody that requested. I have sent this off to the majority of the boards and commissions already. But if somebody did not get that, if you can just reach out to me and I can email this all to you also. But I've listed all the boards and commissions, the department that's associated with it, then the name of the employee, and I did find the employee at the police department here. This just says records, and I apologize, I forgot to update this copy that I'm using here, but Dawn DeBald is the new person in records at the police department that will be managing the Animal Control Board and the Police Merit Commission. So I will reach out to those two boards and update that information with them. But here's their email addresses, phone number if you need to call them. But this is who you would submit the invoice to be paid.
And you can send that out to all the council members?
Okay, yes, I will.
All right, thank you.
So once you get this to that city department, then they will submit we'll enter the invoice as through all of our processes and procedures, and then it will get paid. And the same is similar for the payroll. If it's applicable to your board or commission, if your members get paid, what we would need attached to the payroll vouchers, which is this, would be the attendance for the meetings that you're requesting to be paid for. We also have a payroll schedule. So this payroll schedule shows what the due date is for the payroll and the actual pay date. So these are just the 12 pays per month. And in the salary order, it determines the pay for the board, which are typically, I believe it's like, if your board meets twice a month, it's $25 per meeting, so $50 per month. I didn't include the salary order with this, but all of the boards and commissions, they know what that is. So, so that's the payroll part of it. Like I said, you would just follow this schedule, get it to that same person that's on the Exhibit A here for the employees, and you would get those all to them by these due dates, so that the payroll can be processed in a timely manner, and we're not holding up anything with the city payroll waiting for this information to pay the boards. If you do miss these due dates, we will process your pay with the next pay that we do for the board pays, which they are the first pay of every month, except in December, we pay the December meetings on, we'll pay that on the last pay in December, which this year is December 29th.
Okay. And they all have that form, so they should be using that for attendance for those that are present.
Right, or if they bring in the attendance to the employee, to the department associated with them, all we would need is then they could just sign this form and just staple the attendance to it. So here, we would need the signature of the board president or their designee, and that this was what gets submitted to the department attached to their board.
Okay.
So, yeah, if there's any questions, they can call my office, we can answer, or they can submit or ask the question, or ask the employee associated with their board or commission.
Okay.
So the last thing that we would need would that their minutes, need to be submitted to the city clerk, after their board approves them. So because we must upload those minutes on Gateway monthly, or if there's no meeting, we would just need to note that there was no meeting. So then all of the minutes would be submitted. And I couldn't get this page to turn the right way.
No problem.
But it just has the email addresses for the clerk's office and Caleb where to submit so they can be uploaded to the city's website.
Okay.
And then the minutes become available to the public that way.
Yeah, and we mentioned that at the last one as well. And I'll mention it again before we end today. So basically, they need to take attendance, and if possible, I still recommend that they fill out that form, submit it to the appropriate department by that date in order for payroll to be made. And if it misses that date, they'll get it at the next pay period. Well,
we only do these at the first pay of each month. So they'll receive it, then we might have two payrolls for them the following month.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
I stopped sharing there. Does anybody have any questions or anything?
I don't think we have any. And we'll put that in the clerk's office too. We'll just stamp it so that everybody has those. If you give us the updated list,
yes,
we can use that and make sure all the boards and commissions have it. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so let me share my screen. Hopefully you all can see that. So I can't see anybody. So, all right. So we'll go ahead and get started with Robert's Rules of Order. Before we get started, I just want to mention, one of our community members who's served on multiple boards, who's a retired police officer, Lester Norvell, passed away. We just want to pay our respects to his family. He's been a longtime board and commissioner on multiple boards over the years. I grew up across the street from him, but I did want to acknowledge the fact that we just wanted to send some positive vibes to his family. And again, like I said, he was a pillar in the community. So this presentation is about Robert's Rules of Order. And again, just thank you to all the board and commission members that volunteer your time. And, on these boards, we know it takes time and effort in your participation. So we just wanted to provide some training. If you have any recommendations, again, of trainings that you would like to have or see during the course of the year, contact myself or Councilwoman Dalia Gigas, and we can figure out what the next one would be. But again, we want your feedback, even if it's just to review some more things. So Robert's Rules of Order, just to give you a little icebreaker, this is a presentation that I've used previously. We talk about, is this a myth or is this a fact? And I'm just going to go through each one of them real quick. The first one, a majority is the same as 50% plus one. Abstentions count as ayes or as noes. Chairs cannot make motions and cannot vote. Minutes must be approved before actions are official, and a motion is always necessary. So just to talk about the answers. So a majority is the same as 50% plus one. Majority means more than half. And we'll be talking from Robert's Rules of Order. The 11th edition is what this presentation was based on. The 12th edition is out, but nothing has really changed much. So the term majority vote is used, without qualification. It usually just means more than half of the votes, okay? Abstentions count as ayes or noes. So this one is always tricky for some folks, but to abstain means to vote, not to vote at all. So there is no count for an abstention. And a member who makes no response, if someone says, are there any abstentions? It's basically the same thing, but again, it does not count as a vote as a yes or a no. Chairs cannot make motions and cannot vote. So if the presiding officer is a member of that society, and this is how it's stated in Robert's Rules, as an individual, you have the same right as anybody else as far as debating or voting on anything. But the impartiality required of the chair in the assembly precludes its exercising these rights. So again, if you are the chair, you should, and when you participate in a debate, relinquish the chair to your vice chair and let them continue to preside over the meeting. So that's just an FYI. Minutes must be approved before actions are official. Actions are official when voted on. So if you take action in a meeting, it's official. But the minutes do not become the actual official record or minute until they have been approved. So until your minutes are approved at the next meeting, they are just a draft. So again, they are draft until the minutes are presented at the next meeting for a vote. A motion is always necessary. The correction and approval of minutes is an example of business that is normally handled by a unanimous consent. A formal motion to approve the minutes is not necessarily necessary, but it's not out of order. And under these new rules of COVID, I always recommend doing a roll call anyway. So to talk about parliamentary procedure, basically it's a code of rules and ethics that are used by organizations working together in groups. They're proven rules and customs, they're guidelines, and they're not necessarily the law. And the reason why I say that, if you have bylaws that are, or constitution that goes into more detail, that typically is what you're governed by. But if it's silent, Robert's Rules of Order are typically where you go for making decisions. And then why use parliamentary procedure? And it's just a good way to handle business orderly, to allow participation by all, but also to observe the rule of the majority and then protect the rights of the minority. So when we talk about the rules again, the application of parliamentary law is the best method yet devised to enable assemblies of any size. We use parliamentary procedure, whether it's the city council, boards and commissions. If you participate in a large organization or a nonprofit, typically they're following these rules. It's a way to ensure that, it's fair decision making and the procedures are orderly. So learning about, parliamentary procedure is important. There are two books I recommend. There's this Robert's Rules of Order, Newly Revised in Brief, is a great book. But again, the 12th edition is available as well. And you can see I have it all marked up. But these are good books to have if you belong to many organizations. This will help you as you move through your meetings. So the parliamentarian, who is the parliamentarian? This is the person that advises the president or chair or other members of the committee in attendance of their bylaws, whether it's an ordinance, whatever it is. But this person tends to be the person who attends to procedural details. So I used to sit on a national board where I was a parliamentarian and I was responsible for the bylaws committee, but also in any amendments or any recommendations that were presented to the body, I had to handle those. So it's just a parliamentarian is the person who, if they see something that's out of order, they make suggestions to the chair as they're running the meeting. Applies to, so anything that's not covered in your bylaws, I recommend looking at Robert's Rules of Order. So the parliamentarian, they calls the president's attention to infractions of the rules, typically quietly or slip them a note, keeps notes of the business of the meeting in order to help the chair know what the situation is, whether there's an amendment on the table or not, to help keep business on track. This person should know the bylaws and understand the basic parliamentary procedure, especially if they're part of the nominating or election process as well. And they also seek advice from other sources when in doubt. So I recommend for any board or commission, just a little paperback could be helpful, or even some of the resources that I shared with the clerk's office. Now, what the parliamentarian does not do, they don't make rulings. The president or the chair of that board makes the rulings. They can make suggestions, but they do not make the rulings. They keep order during the meeting unless asked to assist in such matters by the presiding officer, offer unsolicited advice unless a serious error is being made. So it's really truly the chair of those boards and commissions that is keeping the meeting running. They don't rule, the parliamentarian doesn't rule over those meetings. Vote unless the vote is taken. That's something different. That's usually on the national level. But generally, the parliamentarian doesn't speak as the parliamentarian during any meeting. They're usually just there to make sure the meeting is orderly. And I don't think any of the boards and commissions have a parliamentarian, but I just wanted to kind of share what that is. Now, the president or the chair, this is the person who presides over the meeting, prepares the agenda, enforces the rules, designates who speaks at any time, but they should also understand, Robert's rules of order. Keeps order and uses the gavel, handles motions, states the questions, and demonstrates impartiality. I noticed that we, in many of our boards and commissions, the way the meetings are run, truly the president chair is running the meeting, not necessarily sharing all of their thoughts and wishes, but it's really about presiding over the meeting and keeping order. So I just want everybody to be conscious of that. As the chair, you should be preparing the agenda, reaching out to your board and your commissioners to see if they have anything that they would like to add to the agenda, or if there's something they would like to discuss. You do that in advance. And then remember from our last meeting that we had, training, is that there is public notice that you have to provide 48 hours. So when you know that you have a meeting coming up, you should reach out to your board or your commission and ask, is there anything that you would like added to the agenda? And then get your agenda set, and then you get it to the clerk's office and you give your notice. So what is the role of the board or commission member when it comes to parliamentary procedure? Same thing. Participate in the meeting, know your documents, be prepared, address your comments and questions to the chair. It's very important that you address your comments to the chair. A lot of times, and we'll take questions here in a moment. We'll pause. A lot of times we have situations where people are in the meetings and they're having conversations with each other. Any comment or question that you have should be addressed to the chair and the chair only. And that's how you keep the meeting moving. But be involved in the discussion. Strong discussion leads to strong decisions. I said that the last meeting. Be polite, courteous, and engaged. And avoid the intimidation factor. These are voluntary positions that you all have stepped up to participate on these boards and commissions. We said we have a hand raised or comment.
Yes, Albertine Allen.
Okay,
Right.
I was going to ask about the parliamentarian, but you already answered that, so I can take my hand down.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Thank you. So again, as a member, it's important to participate, but again, remember that you should be addressing your chair when you want to speak, and conversations, sidebar conversations should be held to not just a minimum to 0. So remember, with your board members, meetings should be a comfort zone where business is handled in a polite, orderly fashion. Again, these are boards and commissions that you have volunteered to be on. And, what you're doing is trying to, present programs to the community. So respect your officers and your members. So the meeting. What bugs most of us about meetings? I will tell you there are a lot of things that bug me about meetings. Sometimes it's the length of meetings. Sometimes it's people who go off topic. When we ask if there are any questions about a specific item that's on the agenda, and then we veer into Never Never Land. Those are the things that bug most of us about meetings because, again, are they germane to what the discussion is? In most cases, no. And I think people need to go back and watch yourselves when you're on these meetings. Stick to the point, stick to the facts, and keep your emotions, to a minimum. We're passionate about what we do, but again, we are one of many when we're on these boards and commissions. So the solution to some of the things that bug me, these are effective tools. Having your minutes. We talked about minutes last month. They should have actionable items. They should not have emotions in those minutes. And they shouldn't have your own personality and personal items in those minutes. A lot of times you read minutes and it's like, why is that in the minutes? The minutes should be, actions that are taken. It should be factual things that have occurred, and not all the opinions of everybody in that meeting. That is not what effective minutes look like. to the agenda. Everyone should review your agenda. You should not see your agenda for the first time when you attend the meeting. And thirdly, and I love this, and we don't do this enough, even as a city council, I like working by committee. Committee reports, you get the work done in your committees and you bring it back to the body for a recommendation and a vote. You don't have to get into all the semantics and rehash everything every single time. I highly recommend subcommittees and doing the work that way. So to talk briefly about the agenda, again, this is just a sample agenda, and this document will be available in the clerk's office. It's usually developed by the chair. It should be distributed to all members in advance. It may be approved by the body, but it can be amended, like I said, prior to the meeting. But it's critical to running a well-organized meeting is the agenda. Follow your agenda, stay on course. That's what it's there for. So some keys to effective meetings. Again, you guys are taking your time and giving us your time, volunteering your time to be on these boards and commissions. Prepare for the meeting. The meetings will go much smoother and faster if you've already read all of your material in advance. That is the key to any successful board member or commissioner, is that you're prepared. You've read the material. If you have any questions, you've either submitted those in advance or you have them prepared for the meeting. Not to rehash and read it at the meeting and spend 30 minutes just on topics that could have taken 2 minutes. Create an atmosphere for participation. Again, the importance of the agenda. You have to have a quorum. I will say this: if you do not have a quorum, you can have a brief discussion, but I would adjourn that meeting at that time. If you do not have a quorum, I suggest you say, we do not have a quorum, we cannot take action at this time, and adjourn your meeting. So
yeah, I have a question about that. So, Excuse me, sorry for interrupting, but yes, that has happened in the past where we expected the quorum to be there, but they weren't. So we started a meeting without, voting on anything or approving anything because we know we didn't have a quorum. And then later, the person that was late comes in. So now we do have a quorum, and then sometimes the urge is to go back on the agenda and go back and approve minutes and do things like that. So that doesn't sound like a great idea, but I mean, I've seen that happen, and so it's probably best to establish rules about that.
Yeah, so with that, I belong to a women's organization, and I will say that what we do in the beginning of our meeting, probably the first 5 to 10 minutes is more informational anyway, just in case we do get a quorum. And so you don't have to adjourn immediately. If you know someone says they're going to be late, but again, the key to being a good board member is to notify someone if you're not going to be there. I shared this the last time. We have so many boards and commissions where we have people who miss 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings without any notification. And if you are the presiding officer, the board chair, or the board president, and you're not getting a response from a board member, I suggest that you notify your council liaison and you send them a notification that you've had 2 meetings with 0 response from certain members of your board or commission. And the reason why I say that is that we have so many people who are willing to step up. If you signed on the dotted line and you've been sworn in, but you're not coming to meetings, some people will have a good excuse. Maybe there's an illness or there's something going on, but at least a response should be provided. And the other thing, to be a good board chair or a president of a board, contact that member, call them. Maybe there is an issue going on. So, because the attendance is important. You can't get business done if you don't have a quorum. So I just recommend that if you are on a board and commission and you can't uphold your responsibility, I suggest that you resign and allow someone else to have that seat. And again, as a board chair, part of your responsibility is to follow up with your members to make sure that they're just okay. Maybe there's something going on that was unexpected. So updating, your information and giving it to your board chair is super important. Make sure they have your home phone, your cell phone, and a good way to contact you. So moving back to the slide, the duties of the presiding officer, use of the gavel, and not as much as it used to be. Knowing the duties of what your responsibility as a member. Again, look at the code. Look at your ordinance. Make sure you understand what your role and responsibility is. Handling motions. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Methods of voting, ending the meeting, and then follow-ups after the meeting. So let's get into the meaning of motion. It introduces business to the body. And I move that. So my pet peeve, and we do it all the time, I motion to. That is incorrect. It's the incorrect way to bring about a motion. It is that I move that or I move to. I don't motion anything. Motioning is doing all of this. And to get action done, you move to do something. And all motions requires a second to be considered. The only thing that does not require a second, but we tend to do it anyway, and it's not wrong, but recommendations from committee do not require a second. So, for instance, the council has committees, and those committees can bring forth a recommendation through a vote of that committee. If a recommendation is brought to the council, it does not require a second to be considered. And that's with all organizations, whether you're a nonprofit or a board or commission. It's stated by the chair for clarity, and then it's debated by the body for discussion, and then put forward for a vote. I recommend, staying away from the negative. So when you make a motion, I move that we do not do a fundraiser. I move that we don't do this, and I move that we don't. I always recommend that you try to take it from a positive lens and state a motion. Instead of saying, I move that we do not do a fundraiser next year, I move that we could look at, take another look at a different fundraiser next year, or move that we do a fundraiser in 2023. You can change it, but remove those nots and don'ts out of your motions if you can. So, handling motions. So, 3 steps by which a motion is introduced. A member makes a motion, another member seconds the motion, and then the chair states the question on the motion. So, exceptions. Again, a second is not required for motions submitted by a committee, nor for motions made in a committee or a small board. And then after debate has begun, the lack of a second is immaterial. So, for instance, there's a time where someone brought forth a motion and no one made a second. It died. So we went on to the next thing. So it becomes immaterial if there isn't a second, and no need for continued discussion. 3 steps in the consideration of a motion. The members debate the motion. The chair puts the question to vote, and the chair announces the results of the vote. With the city council, it's a little different in the order that we do. So we go out for public comment, and then it comes back to council comment, and then once it's on 3rd reading, we'll ask for a motion, for someone to move to approve or adopt. So to talk about the different types of motions, the main motion, this is basically, the method for bringing forth business to the body. But then you have subsidiary motions, and those are the ones applied to another motion for the purpose of either amending it, delaying it, or disposing of it. And those examples, and we'll go through a couple, is to amend, to lay on the table, or you can refer it to committee. Then you have privileged motions, those that are urgent or important, needing immediate consideration. So it could be a motion for adjournment, recess, point of privilege is rarely used, but like I said, there could be a council person or someone on the committee may have had an emergency and they move for a recess for 5 to 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it might be. Incidental, those that arise out of a pending question. And this is where you hear a point of order, appeal, or inquiry. So if someone believes that we're out of order or not following our own rules or following Robert's Rules of Order, someone will say point of order. And then restorative, and these are the motions that bring a question back before the body. And that's when, if we've laid something on the table, this is where you'll take it from the table and bring it back for discussion and for a vote. So here are a few things for rules for governing the main motion. And these are your most important and most frequently used. These are things you do at every single meeting. And it's to bring a substantive proposal, before your commission or your board. It can be proposed only when no other motion is before your assembly or your committee. So there cannot be more than one motion on the table at a time, main motion on the table at a time. And it requires a second. These are all debatable, but they can be amended. And remember that, all votes require a majority vote, but some would, require 2/3 vote depending on your rules. So subsidiary motions, these are the ones that alter the main motion. They may delay or hasten consideration of the main motion, and these are the examples. Amending the motion. This is where you modify that main motion. You may add, delete, strike out, or substitute wording. I know with the council, we require amendments to be in writing. You can postpone indefinitely, which tends to kill the main motion, or you may commit or refer. And again, if it's something of a financial matter, maybe you have a finance committee, you can refer it to a committee to investigate and then to come back with the recommendation to your board or commission. Postpone definitely. You can postpone to the next meeting or a specific date. Limit or extend debates. We don't have a defined time on debates. Maybe we should, but we don't. And I don't think any of the boards or commissions do either. So to limit or extend debate, that's typically if there's like a 10-minute window or 10-minute time frame, or that you say that debate is limited to 5 or 10 minutes. And if it's an item that could be contentious or may need more time, you can move to limit or extend the debate. And this may not be a bad thing to think about if you know there's something that's going to be that is going to require some time or may become contentious. Maybe you limit the debate to 20 minutes and that's it. And then you move on. And then you have lay on the table. And this is where you postpone temporarily until it comes back. So you can either postpone indefinitely, refer it to committee, or lay on the table. I can't see if there are any hands or anything. So just interrupt me if there's anybody who has a question.
I have a question.
Yes.
So lay on the table, usually you have a date also of when it's going to be brought back off the table.
Yes. That's correct. So lay on the table, that's why it says postpone temporarily. So the postpone definitely and lay on the table, they're one and the same to me, because they're both temporary. But again, if you lay it on the table, it's typically to the next meeting. So privilege motions. So these are motions that have no direct connection to the main motion, as I said before. It may be something of pertains to the rights and privileges of meetings. Once we're in the meeting, like at City Council, we're in the chambers. If there's an emergency of some sort, whether it's council member or just needing a brief recess, this is where a privilege motion would come in. Recess, short intermission during the meeting, call for the orders of the day. That's something I haven't ever seen before, but it's one of those things that I've seen in training every time I've attended. I've never seen it happen. Adjournment, it closes the meeting. But this last one, this is an interesting one. Fix the time to adjourn. So to establish another meeting to continue business. This is probably more at the federal level. I've seen meetings that go on for days where they don't adjourn, and they actually establish another time to continue the meeting. And I haven't seen that at a local level before. So that's what that is. Fix the time to adjourn. Incidental motions arise only incidentally out of business before the assembly. This is where you have point of order, and it requires a ruling from the chair when a member thinks the rules were broken. So basically, this person can interrupt the speaker, and you'll see that in our council business, someone will say point of order, like the last council meeting. I forgot we were on an amendment, I think, and point of order because I had moved on to something else and we hadn't completed what we were doing. So this is where you can interrupt the speaker. It may not necessarily relate to the main motion, but it does relate to how we conduct business. So it takes precedence over any other motions. It's one of those things that you have to address it right then and there. Appeal, I haven't, we really don't call it an appeal, but it takes a decision from the chair and it gives it to the membership. So let's say it's a point of order, and there has to be a ruling from the chair that if the rule was broken or not, and they give a decision, and someone can say, well, I don't agree with your decision. They can appeal that, actually. And typically for us, we have our attorney there, and the attorney can tell you yay or nay. But for some of the smaller boards and commissions, you may not necessarily have an attorney there that guides you through that process. So again, point of order is just for clarity, so that, or if there's a inquiry you might have. Here's some more examples of that. Examples of incidental motions. To suspend the rules would be one, when they want to do something, but they can't do it without breaking the parliamentary rules. So remember, rules, you can move to suspend the rules that you have. You just have to have a vote for that. And we have a 2/3 vote that we have to have for the suspension of the rules. It used to be unanimous, but it's 2/3 now. So it depends on your bylaws or your constitution. Objection to consideration, it means to suppress the main motion. I've never seen this happen. Not debatable and requires 2/3 vote. Parliamentary inquiry, question on procedure. You can again interrupt, and that's where that point of order or point of information comes into play. Restorative motions are those that bring things back on the table. Those motions that bring a question back before the body, enable the group to change its mind or correct actions. They were brought up when no business is pending. So reconsider, examples of restorative motions. Now, I did have this happen with a women's organization where I actually made a motion and realized after the fact that the 45-day time frame that we had in the motion actually was not long enough. So I went back to the executive board and told them that I was going to ask to reconsider the decision that was made, or the vote from the previous meeting. Then you have also take from the table. This is where you laid something on the table. Now you're ready to bring it back. You take it from the table to resume the consideration of that motion.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between reconsidering something and amending something? You mean it's after it passed already, right?
Right. So we passed. So the reconsider, we actually passed an action at a meeting, and it was very specific in the time, and we realized that we could not even accommodate the time. So the next meeting, I asked them to reconsider that motion, and we passed that instead. Now, for city council and for elected officials, it may not be the same. Once something is dead, I believe that there is IC code that we are governed by. This is more for boards and commissions than it is for elected officials. So yeah, it was hasty, and we said we wanted to do something within 45 days, realizing that COVID had impacted the time frame. We knew we couldn't make it work, so I asked them to reconsider that motion. So that will be the difference. Something that was passed already. All right, basic rules of precedence. So when a motion is being considered, any motion of higher precedence may be proposed, but no motion of lower precedence may be proposed. So motions to amend are voted on first. So if we have a motion on the table, someone votes to amend, moves to amend that motion, to amend that motion, we have to vote on that first before we go back to the main motion. So motions are considered and voted on in reverse order of the proposal. So the motion last proposed is considered and disposed of first. So that amendment, for example, would be disposed of first and handled before you get back to the main motion. So just for an example, Madam President, I move to approve the budget for the Women's History Month program. Member B says, I second. The president then said, it's moved by Member A and seconded by Member B to approve the budget for the Women's History Month. Is there any discussion? And then after the discussion, those in favor of the motion to approve the budget for the Women's History Month program say aye. Those opposed say no. We're in hybrid and virtual meetings, so, we know that a roll call vote is required. And then that person states the motion is adopted. But let's say, for instance, we get through, Madam President, I move to approve the budget for the Women's History Month for $500. Let's say someone said $500 and it's seconded. And there's discussion and someone raises their hand and says, well, I would like to amend that. I move that we approve the budget for the Women's History Month program for $1,000. And it gets a second. There's a vote for the amendment first. And if it fails, we're back to the original motion. But if it is adopted, that becomes the main motion. So, and that's just a quick and dirty and simple example. Voting, I think some of the commissions and members vote annually. I recommend, and maybe we need to look at this and evaluate this, but sometimes I believe that annual vote is too much and it breaks the consistency in the progress of boards and commissions. That's just my own personal opinion. Again, with voting, just we realize we fall under the open door law. So there's no ballots for us. And remember, abstentions are not counted. And then as far as resources, again, I have Robert's Rules of Order, the 11th edition. I just have not, I have too many notes in here that I just can't make myself buy the new one. But you can get it electronically on the website. But the National Association of Parliamentarians is a great resource. But also Robert's Rules of Order, the website.com is also a great resource as well. I know the library has this book as well, but again, I just recommend getting some type of paperback or going online and getting it electronically. So I will stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions. I know it's a lot.
Hello.
Yes.
This is Rodney McCormick. I have a question to ask you. Do Robert Rules of Order address commissioners requesting a special meeting?
No. So the open door law is pretty much, so let me say this. The presiding officer of each board and commission typically is responsible for calling the meetings, unless it's a subcommittee. So I would say that if someone on the board that is not the chair is requesting that, it would go through the board chair. And it doesn't necessarily have to be granted. So it's a little hairy in that situation, unless you are like the chair of a subcommittee or a committee of that board and commission. Like, for instance, for me, for the city council, not any council member should be calling special meetings. It should really go through the board president, and it should really go through the board or commission's chair for a special meeting.
Well, this particular question, this particular situation, our bylaws state that 2 commissioners can request a special meeting, and it must be the president must honor that and have a special meeting. Is that
if it's in the bylaws and they're not following the bylaws, then I would state that should go to the liaison, but also the Public Access Council. Again, complaints can be filed that way. I would suggest using your board liaison first, and state, we've requested a special meeting for these items. And if that doesn't happen, then the council liaison can take action. And if nothing is still met or done, that's when you get into, okay, that's a direct violation of your own bylaws.
Right.
And then that's a whole nother can of worms.
Okay, and my last question, going back to the duties of the chair or the president. Is it appropriate for a chair or the president to call each individual commissioner, or maybe 2 of them at the same time, trying to lobby a yes vote or a no vote for something that's on the agenda or something that's coming up on an agenda?
So regardless if you're the president or the chair, you're an individual member of that board or committee or commission. So you do have a right as an individual for your vote. If you're looking for something that you want to get done, again, remember the last training that we talked about the open door law. We also talked about, lost my train of thought on the term that we use, because you can't have a quorum. You can't have, and there's serial meetings. So serial meetings is where if it's at least 3 of you on a meeting, like of a majority, 3, and then you turn around and have a conversation with another person, and it's 2 of you, that could be a serial meeting because now you have a quorum. So we have 9 members, 5 people are a quorum. But if you have 3 and then you have, so go back to the other presentation and look at that, because, you know, you can get into a situation where that could happen. But that person has a right as a commissioner to, you know, to ask for support, just like anybody else. You just can't have serial meetings. But again, if it's something that they want to do, I don't recommend as the presiding officer that person do that. That's just my recommendation. I think when you're a presiding officer, your duty is different, and that you should be more impartial in running the meeting. And then if you have a comment or a concern that you're passionate about, you relinquish the chair and you have that discussion. That's how it should happen.
Okay, thank you.
The rules to do that.
Thank you for putting this on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Are we good, Caleb?
I'm not seeing any other hands.
All right, thank you. Well, let me say this while we got you on here too, Caleb. You know, I just appreciate, I know we have been working you. COVID has really put you to the test, and I want to thank you personally for supporting all the boards and commissions, because I know that we run to you at the nth hour to get everything done for us. So I appreciate that. And again, for all the boards and commissioners, there is a PDF with some additional information that I sent to the clerk's office for everybody. There is and I'm just going to name what it's called. So that is Robert's Rules Simplified, that I submitted to the clerk's office. It's all in one document along with this PowerPoint, but it's a good resource as well. And I'm going to go ahead and share it so you can see it. But again, you know, get copies of this stuff. It's and it's just a simplified version of Robert's Rules and some of the basic things that we talked about today. And it's just a 2-pager for that if you want to. And this is a great table too. But again, it's a quick reference that you can use in your meetings. And I recommend that anybody that's on the board of commission, I recommend that you take the time to understand Robert's Rules of Order so that meetings can go smoothly and more effectively. All right. Well, again, thank you. We've been trying to keep these to 1 hour. It is 6:29. I'm right on time. So again, thank you again for attending. If you have any suggestions for future topics, you know, let us know. We probably won't schedule anything until about May. So send topics to me or Dahlia, and we'll get something for you. So we appreciate it, and share this with your boards and commissions if you weren't able to get to participate. So thanks again. Have a good night.